Two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but today we are back with our last film, uh, uh, talking about some of the creepiest movies, stuff that really bothers us. And whether it bothers us now or bothered us then, we're talking about them. So, Dustin, this was your choice. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the movie that you had us watch for this week?
Well, for my pick for movies that that like scared us or like left an impression on us, in that kind of way, I actually picked Jaws 2, which I have kind of a weird history with. So I actually saw this movie before I saw Jaws, and it had pretty much the same effect on me that Jaws did on everybody else. Like, I was afraid to go in water to the point where I quit taking baths and learned to take showers. Like, it was it's pretty wild. So up until I think I saw this when I was maybe 5 or 6. And I think up until I was like 12 or 13, like I was just really nervous, like in being submerged in water. Like it also didn't help that I liked a lot of like cryptid animal stuff, like Loch Ness Monster, like lake monsters and stuff. So this really booted up a fear of bodies of water that persisted for quite a while. Even worked in like swimming pools, like crummy above ground swimming pools. Like I'd be in there by myself, after everybody else would get out, and I'd be like, I'm suddenly really uncomfortable. And because I had a really active imagination, I could almost like picture it in like there with me. It was messed up. But anyway, so I first saw Jaws 2. I might be remembering this wrong because I'm not sure if this was actually possible, but way back in the day, the Disney Channel, when it was newer in like the early 90s, used to have all kinds of just really random stuff on it. And I think I actually saw Jaws 2 on the Disney Channel. It may have been USA, to be fair, but part of my mind is remembering, why was it on the Disney Channel? And the only way we really had to revisit media, in my house at least, was Dad really liked to make VHS tape recordings of TV. And so we had about half of this movie recorded on a VHS tape. And so I would actually rewatch that after a point, even though it did scare the hell out of me so badly. And I've always thought this was a pretty good movie. Like, it was many years until people were like, the Jaws sequels are terrible. And I'd only ever seen them in the vacuum of, oh, they're on TV. And I have literally nobody to talk to about them. So I used to actually think Jaws 4 was okay until people pointed out all the problems with it. And that's like, okay, and now that you mention it, like I can see all the shit you're talking about. But in terms of like being I think people are kind of harder on the Jaws sequels than they should be, because Jaws might be the best movie ever made. Like, that's very arguable, of course, but with that being like the first entry of your series, there is literally no way in hell like Jaws 2, 3, or whatever were ever going to be anywhere near as good as the first Jaws. I mean, they certainly tried their best with Jaws 2, which plays out very similarly to the first Jaws. The shark appears, kills some people. It's not taken seriously. And we have kind of a long setup to a conclusion where they confront the shark. But I started my rewatch of this a little late. I've actually seen this movie quite a few times over the years, to the point where I remember like the major events, and I read a primer. So if I get a scene wrong here or there, I am sorry in advance. But I was kind of surprised how slowly this movie went along, because I remember 4 or 5 major points in the plot, and I hit 2 of them at about the 40-minute mark, and this is a 2-hour movie. So I was thinking to myself, like, what is the other I know the finale is like a half hour or more. Like, what are they doing in the meantime? So it's been an interesting thing to revisit because so back in the day, Marvel Comics used to do adaptations of movies that they would release in comic form, and I have the one for Jaws 2, and I reread that earlier today. I watched some of the special features on the Blu-ray disc, which were just some deleted scenes thus far. I didn't have time to really get into the good ones before I realized, oh wait, I'm starting too late.
That's okay. There's like extras on the DVD that I didn't even know were there. So I might go back and watch some of that later.
I think I watched these. I think I watched these discs at the beginning of either the beginning of last year or this year for my disc clean out project. And I remember the extras on this were actually kind of good. It was impressive, although it is a universal disc, so it has that weird, annoying menu, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But like overall, I think this is a pretty good movie, and I will defend it as such, because it tries a little too hard to do exactly what Jaws did before, but at the same time, it seems to realize, okay, we can't be as good as the first Jaws, so we're going to do our own thing, and just try to match like tones of scenes in the first one. If that makes sense as a summary to you guys. But anyway, Shark is back. I have the novelization too, which the novelization is a pretty good book that has quite a few differences from the film. It honestly like works better as a book, which is ironic because the first Jaws, the movie is better than the book for the original Jaws. Like the original Jaws has a real groaner of a second act and some foolish choices, to put it.
Some of which they tried to incorporate into this movie, but didn't quite get there.
Yeah, they use like a discarded subplot from the first Jaws here. It's like I think they imply like the mob thing with the mayor.
Yeah.
It's like because there's a new construction project and it just has to go through no matter what. And it's like, why is this so important to you? So, but anyway, yeah, I really enjoy this movie, and I am going to be kind of commenting along with stuff I remember from the novel. That are some of the differences. And the comic is kind of long, so I only was able to really kind of like skim through it. But it seems like some of those events are different too. Like it shows some killings is different. Like I like how it doesn't bother to give anybody names in the comic. I mean, the movie does, but you hear their names at like the beginning of the film. It's like, who is that guy again? I did remember that one this time though. I remember Tina. So that's better than I've ever managed before with this film.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's not really touched on in the film, but in the novel, the explanation for why is there another shark here? The new shark is a female who's larger than our shark from Jaws, and they actually met here when the Jaws shark was around, and they mated, and she's come back to like have her pups. So the book lists her as 30 feet long, so she is slightly larger than Bruce.
Okay.
And like and the reason she's not necessarily killing for food, but more so to just kind of clear the waters. It's like the book takes a lot of time with point of view shots, for point of view paragraphs from the shark, where the shark is just like, eliminate anything that could be a threat, which is why it goes after the boats so hard at the end, because it's picked that particular patch of water to have the babies. And they just happen to have really bad luck being there. But anyway, so it's kind of a first impression of the book, the comic, the film, like the history I have with it. So quite a lot of info there. But let's move on to somebody else's first impression. Who wants to play next? Dave, your mic's on.
Sure, I'll start it off if you want me to. I'm not exactly sure when my first viewing, first full viewing of Jaws 2 was, but a lot of times they have had at least the first 3 Jaws, like in syncopation. Sometimes they put Jaws 4 first. It all depends on which film they want to start off with. But I've always caught little bits and pieces of it up until I actually owned all 4 of them myself, and then eventually went through a Jaws 1 through 4 marathon with Tammy about 13 years ago. And I know she's seen it a lot more since than I have. But that being said, seen it again. The town mayor pisses me off. Many of the people involved with the mobs sort of annoy me. Some of the screaming of some of the teenagers somewhat annoy me. But all in all, I mean, it's not a bad movie. And I think it's a little underrated, partially due to the whole, okay, the shark is back, or a shark is back, and Chief knows it, but nobody's believing him, So it's like one of them kinds of storylines, and you see the Chief at his downer. I mean, you don't have like his other buddies there to help him out, and it's his kids that kind of almost ruin everything. So I thought it was a decent watch again. Granted, I think they've done the same thing with Godzilla that they've done with the shark, but it isn't a bad ending either. I mean, it's a good B flick to watch. I actually like watching them in syncopation because it's almost kind of like watching an entire story, play out of each. So I would call this a slice of life, and look at the real thing, because didn't it like kind of deter from the novel too? Am I mistaken on that?
Jaws 2? Yeah, it does have different scenes from the novel. Like the novel is a bit more like fleshed out. Like later with the diver characters that we just kind of like run into as divers, like that guy is like a running character in the book that we spend a good amount of time with. And he's
okay,
actually
the one that we got all the photos from that he has to go and like prove to the mayor that okay, that is a shark,
Oh no, the guys at the beginning, like they're explained a little bit more, but they still die pretty quickly and don't necessarily matter all too much. I'm referring to the guy like later on when the boats are heading out and the divers encounter the shark and the guy like pulls his cord and ascends too fast. Like that's a whole scene with a named character who we've followed for about 2/3 of the book up to that point.
Okay.
And one of the differences there is the shark actually gets that guy. There's a whole there's actually a whole subplot in the book with there's some military equipment being tested. It's like some sort of experimental buoy, and the shark attacks it and like moves it, and the Navy is offering like a reward. So there's a lot more divers in the water like trying to find it because it's something like a $10,000 reward, which is huge for 1978. So there are actually more people in the water maybe than there were before.
Okay.
And that's kind of, I think that's what they, if I I'm not 100% sure because I didn't have time to read the whole book again. It is a short book, but I can't be certain, but they may have replaced the buoy plotline with the killer whale as like a foreshadowing of stuff the shark is doing.
Okay.
But I remember the buoy is for sure not in Jaws 2, the film.
Yeah, that makes a little sense.
Hmm.
Jake, did you want to go next?
Sure, I could do that. So I have kind of an interesting history with this one too. Although nothing too extraordinary, but interestingly enough, I have read the book. It's one of the very few novelizations based on a film that I have read. And I remember reading it as a young teen. I remember reading this one and The Good Son, and maybe another one, but I remember those two. I had read the original Jaws and, by Peter Benchley, some of his other books too, and I was a big fan of for a while. I will agree with Dustin that the movie does improve on the book, mainly insofar as Hooper is less of an asshole. I don't miss the subplot with him cheating on Brody's wife, like Brody's wife cheating with him. The mafia thing, I didn't really lose much. And of course, you don't have Robert Shaw's Quint in the book. You have Quint, but having Robert Shaw play the character is,
totally different personality.
And you don't have the music in the book, so there are definite improvements in the translation to screen. Jaws 2 and through 4, I saw all the Jaws movies as a kid. I saw them all very young.
Same.
I hated Jaws 3 for multiple reasons. And I've taken years to get back to that one. But this one is honestly the one I remembered the least. I remembered little bits of it, mostly the power line at the end, the cable at the end. I remember that scene. And Dustin, as you were describing the book, it triggered some memory of, oh, yeah, I remember that. But I honestly did not remember it ahead of that because it's been years. It's been probably, if I had to guess, this might also be the Jaws movie I've seen the fewest times, which might be one of the reasons I don't remember it well. And if I had to guess, it's probably been over 25, bordering on 30 years since I've seen this movie. It's probably been about 24, 25 years since I read the book. It's been a while. So I was watching it almost as a new movie, just with bits here and there I remembered. I definitely caught the references to the, again, it's more implied that the mafia are involved, but all through I'm thinking, why the freaking hell does Mayor Vaughn still have a job? And if there was a mafia tie, that might help to explain that, I guess. Like, vote for this guy or else. No, or he will intentionally feed you to the sharks.
Some of the political podcasts I listen to have made a joke about that once. It's like, nobody's ever really held accountable in government because the mayor is still the mayor in Jaws 2. It's like, he should have lost, but what the hell happened?
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
And instead you get Brody fired for trying to do his job. Now, granted, firing off a gun on a beach full of people was probably not a smart move.
He was kind of panicking, though.
Yeah, he was panicking. He was putting himself, unfortunately, in a position to look like the scapegoat that these guys wanted, unfortunately.
Right.
But and I read, I read some of the background. I would have liked to watch some programs, but I did read some background on this, and apparently there were multiple reasons. I thought watching this that Roy Scheider looked a little
Checked out.
pissy. He did not seem. He's like, I don't even want to be here today. You got that impression in almost every scene he's in, and from what I read, that was an accurate impression.
Yeah, something about contractual obligation, like with Universal, and it was like his way out of something he didn't want to do.
Apparently, he was going. I didn't see the specifics of why he dropped out of Deer Hunter, but he was supposed to be in that. Incidentally, interesting connection. I almost suggested Deer Hunter for next month, but we ended up with Brandon's pick anyway. But I bet you it would have landed on Deer Hunter if I picked that. The overall impressions, I find it an entertaining film. Like I said, I've always hated the third one, but not necessarily because it's a bad film, as so much as I just never really saw it as a Jaws movie. And I guess originally when I first saw it, there were other reasons why. I was probably too young and what have you. But I never saw it as a Jaws movie. This one and Jaws the Revenge. I loved Jaws the Revenge when I was a kid, and now people diss on it like the worst movie ever made. And I kind of want to see it again, and just to see.
Well, the worst movie ever made seems to change every year with new releases. Last year it was
Right.
Halloween Ends, and this year it's Five Nights at Freddy's, which is ridiculous to claim, honestly. Like it.
But so overall, I mean. Yeah, the movie is probably a shadow of what it could have been. But it's still a fairly entertaining movie. It does its job. It's I'll probably more or less forget it again within 5 years, maybe sooner. Although for me, a second viewing really helps give me a lot more longevity for a film, give it much longer legs. Again, I can't swear this was a second viewing, but it's the first one in many, many years, so it might as well be.
I'm feeling glad I read the book in like 2016 and I saw this in full along with the other sequels no more than a year ago, so I feel current.
Very good. Yeah. How long ago did we cover Jaws? That was what, maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago? Something?
Oh, probably longer than that.
Okay. Well, so that was current-ish for me by that standard, and I think I've seen it since then. Like I said, it's been ages since I've seen the other two, but yeah, I guess that's my my first impression there.
Okay. What about you, Tammy?
It's definitely not my first time watching it. I've seen it a ton of times. I don't remember the first time I watched it. Most of the Jaws movies, if I'm looking for something to watch on TV and I can't find anything I'm interested in, and there's a Jaws movie on, I'll go turn the Jaws movie on. So I've seen it plenty of times. They have the marathons like David was talking about quite often where they'll play at least the first three. So, yeah, I liked it plenty. I mean, you know, there's definitely things in the first one that there's no way you could top, you know, but it was still good. I agree that it kind of dragged a little bit, you know, but when they got to the climax, it really got to the climax, that's for sure. But it was still interesting, and The storyline, all the drama that comes up with it about this person saying that, and that person saying that, and this person not believing that person, this person not doing everything they're not supposed to do, the normal drama. But I still was a good watch. I don't get sick of it.
Okay. Well, Dustin, why don't you bring us into the
Make about
plots and subplots?
that's a good point to make about how often this used to be on TV, because it would be almost like Tremors. It would be kind of everywhere, and they would just slap the rest of them on right after. So I think that was a common experience probably in the 90s.
Yeah, number 4 wasn't always on though. Sometimes they all just like the Back to the Futures. Sometimes they would have like 1 and 2, and then 3 they wouldn't even care about. So.
Yeah, ironically, I think 3 might be my favorite one, like, of the sequels. Like, obviously, Jaws is better than Jaws 3D, but I like the aquarium setting with Jaws 3D. Like, I think that's kind of cool that it's this big, like, sprawling, like, lagoon.
Which isn't surprising when they went and did the Meg, that they did an aquarium scene there too.
Also, there was a Jaws game in the mid-2000s, and the first level is breaking out of a place like that. Like, the game has a tutorial level, and at the end of the tutorial level, you're captured and put into that aquarium. And you have to, like, break out by, like, smashing through tunnels and stuff. It's honestly pretty cool. Like, I appreciate it a lot. Like, Jaws Unleashed was not a good game, but it had a lot of extremely fun things you could do anyway. So
they need to bring that back to one of these newer platforms.
They kind of did. There's a game called Maneater that is basically the same spirit of Jaws Unleashed, but better in every way. Like, the controls actually work, for example. Like, it's pretty fun. Like, it's great. Like, Maneater, I think it's on all platforms. But anyway, so the film opens with these divers exploring the wreck of what we quickly discover is the Orca, like Quint's boat that was sunk at the end of the first film. It's been, I think, roughly a year, as given in the book, and I think the movie mentions that too. So I'm not 100% if the time frame is different in the film, but I don't think it is. Anyway, so they're taking pictures of the Orca wreck when all of a sudden they're attacked, and they manage to get an alligator-style photo, like the movie alligator-style photo of the shark as it's like tearing them apart. And later on, that's pretty hard proof that there's a shark, that the shark has returned, but it's ignored, which is ugh. But anyways, that's kind of our initial moment of, like, suspense. It's like, it's not as effective as the first kill in Jaws, of course, because what genuinely could be, like, you could never beat that. But it does establish.
Well, even the experts are kind of against our chief here, so he's got odds stacked against him.
Yeah, that is another thing that doesn't make sense of this film. When a killer whale, like, completely torn up with, like, covered in shark bites, washes up on the beach, and some scientist is there with Brody, like, giving him advice on it, and she's like, "Hey, it couldn't have been a shark. It couldn't have been this." Blah blah blah. It's like, are you looking at it, lady? Like, and she's just so hostile to you. It's like, why would it be another shark? Yeah, it's like, it happened last year, man. Come on. But anyway,
I do want to say, before he was in Christine, Arnold, the guy who played Arnold in Christine, is young in here as Doug, one of the other kids that ends up being out there beyond the lighthouse with the others. If you want to know something kind of cool.
Yeah. I think I see him in my mind now. Damn, you're right. I know, kind of
I
weird.
recognized him right off the bat, and Tammy was like, "I thought he looked familiar, but I was thinking." She was thinking the young kid from Little House on the Prairie, but that's too young. That's too like older to me. So, and I looked it up and I was like, "Hell yeah, that's him."
Connection. But well, anyway, after our diver attack, we find ourselves at a fundraiser of some kind for a new like construction project that's going on the island. And Brody's wife is like the PR person for this company. And we get reintroduced to like Brody's family and then some of Mike's friends. Like Mike is like 17 in this instead of like a child like on the first Jaws. So some parts of the movie really focus on him more so than Brody. Which
yeah, because he's a teenager and he wants to like have fun with like his boat that he's kind of like, I think he's like created it from scratch or some because that's what beach kids do, So I think he's really proud of that boat of his or whatever.
Yeah, it helps to kind of get them out onto the water too, because Brody pretty much immediately is like, "Hey, we rented this camera. Like, hey, there's a dive flag, but no divers." And Brody's immediately like, "Oh no." So if he had just been able to like ground Mike successfully, like I don't know where the movie would have been able to go. So because the movie has like a bigger cast, but only like 10 or 12 characters are really all that important to us. Like a lot of the teens kind of just exist in this to die. It is sort of like a slasher movie in many ways.
In a sense, but Mike's best friend. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I feel like a lot of the teens are given a little bit more depth and certainly a longer intro than is typical for a slasher film. At the end of the day, most of them are kind of archetypes, but most of them get some good screen time and, a couple of good lines.
Yeah, Mike has a couple of friends. One of them in particular is a girl. I don't know what her name is, but she's got like long curly brown hair. And it's her cousin that she wants to blind date Mike with. And the other guy, he's kind of a comic relief guy. He's there to be stupid, basically. But he's actually more helpful later on. To be honest, he's not as stupid as I thought he was going to be. He actually helps get Mike's brother back on board a couple of times after he slipped off and whatnot. But that love interest, that cousin, she's the one who convinces Mike, "Hey, you don't do everything that your parents tell you to do you?" So it was her who convinced him to come out with them. So just wanted to point that out.
And she does regret that.
Yes.
It's like once the shark starts killing them all. Well, I say that, but to be honest, I had totally forgotten the whole thing about this being a shark that was trying to pup and was looking for a place to pup. Because that's not really apparent in the movie, but I do now feel like I remember that from the book. And I was wondering, like, this shark keeps harassing these people, but it's not really killing that many of them. It really does seem more like it's interested in harassing them. I mean, it kills a few, but you know,
even that specialist that's brought in by the mayor, she says, Chief says something about that, and she's like, sharks don't do that. Sharks don't come back at you with revenge like that. And he's thinking to himself, like, you know what? I happen to know a shark that did, you know. But it's almost like this movie almost somewhat forgets the first incident.
it
Just
does what?
Almost forgets the first movie never happened, ever happened. You know what I mean?
It does.
Just a little bit.
I mean, sure, some people try to make clear that they want to forget it and sweep it under the rug, but yeah. I do think that from what I understand of the production, though, if that is one of the things that comes across, like certain things come across that possibly weren't intended by anyone involved because so many people were involved. They fired the original director. They brought a new person in who had a different vision for the movie. The script went through several versions of story. You had a leading man who did not want to be there and made very plain that he did not want to be there. He had all kind of fun stuff going on. So I'm sure some of the stuff that you get from the movie or don't get from the movie, it probably wasn't immediately apparent to the people making it that was going to be how it would turn out, you know?
Oh yeah. So Dustin,
It's a while before anybody's really onto the shark, isn't it? Like they don't really get any warning until they're like out on the boats because the sharks first
It's not until that skiing incident happens, and then shortly after that, when the blonde went out with her boyfriend.
Well, that wasn't that short. The blonde, the part where he gets attacked, they were actually out with the other kids.
Pretty far into the film.
But the skiing incident was a big. Brody had already kind of wondered about the missing divers, but when the boat, when that happened, that really got his mind churning, like, and the orca just confirmed it for him. But no one else even wanted to acknowledge the possibility. It was like,
Well, they did kick up the carcass from the ski boat incident, and that was kind of a. I think I remember seeing that.
That came a little later, but yeah.
That was kind of a jump scare for me the first time. The burned body.
Well, Brody jumped too.
That's a great scene with like the tension they build for that. Like they use the music deliberately, which is normally reserved for only if the shark is around, but I don't think the shark was even there this time in the novelization because we don't really get that sound in the movie. I'm trying. But the water skiing kill really sticks out in my mind because it's very like in your face. And it happens pretty quick too, so it's kind of like, wait, what's going on? Oh, why is the ocean red?
Yeah, it looks like the blonde that is. Well, this blonde is actually liked by one of the kids there. In fact, when they were at the party, they were the one friend to that geeky looking kid with glasses. He had like sort of the hots for her for a moment, but then his friend pointed out that she had a boyfriend and all that jazz. Well, her and that boyfriend were beaching on a beach with a picnic of some sort, and I guess she might have recognized the skier because she skied in real close and waved at her. And then it was shortly after that that the shark basically ran into the boat, and she was telling dude to swim faster, and it got him. And then I think
No, Dave, you're throwing two completely different
far
things
ahead.
together.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
no.
the skier ended up sinking into the water and got eaten and disappeared. And she looked around and saw the shark coming. And once it came through the boat, she poured gasoline all over herself and
Which makes so much sense.
Was it that she fired a
She tried to fire a flare at the shark, and it sparked on all the gasoline she just put on herself, and ended up blowing up the boat.
Well, I don't think she meant to pour the gasoline on herself, though.
Oh, she definitely did.
She
Not
picked
on purpose, but she did.
She picked up the bottle and it was open.
But
poured all over her.
Can that she picked up, and the liquid actually went onto her body, and she dropped the gasoline can, and then she picked up the flare and pointed the flare at the shark, and it lit herself on fire along with it.
I don't think she meant to pour the gasoline on herself. I think
I don't think she did either.
She went to pour it over the boat, and when she picked it up and turned it upside down, all of a sudden it all came out, and it got on her.
Yeah.
And the old lady on the beach front saw the explosion. So she didn't see what exactly happened, but she couldn't explain why they did what they did. So, and the mayor ended up chalking it up to, freak accident. But anyways, Dustin, continue.
Yes.
If you want to bring us forward.
Oh, so with the water skier attack, so this water skier and her mom are just kind of out enjoying the ocean, and all of a sudden, our water skier is pulled under the waves. So there's a couple of fake outs before that moment. We have somebody in one of those like paragliders being like dunked and like carried off by the wind, like when their boat pulling them like pulls away. We have kind of a fake out with one of those, and it's a little bit like the beach scene in the first Jaws, where it's like, who's it gonna attack? Although it's nowhere near as subtle, because it's like, oh, here's this big loud thing that we're gonna focus on. It's like, oh well, it's gonna be there. And then the movie gets kind of crazy with it, because after the shark like tackles and kills her, it goes after what I'm pretty sure is her mom in the boat. And I think this was one of the things people criticized as like really silly about Jaws 2, because here, like, the shark is chomping on the boat, like she's in such a huge panic that she picks up like a gas can, just has something to throw at it, and the cap's off. She ends up pouring gasoline all over herself, and she tries to shoot the shark with a flare gun, and she burns a lot of its face off. She like really scars it up pretty good, but she also blows up her boat. So it just goes from they are far enough from the shore, nobody can see any of this happening, like to everybody on the shore. It's just like the boat blew up for no reason, which is kind of funny, honestly. And so Brody's investigation of that ends up being kind of his catalyst to really take a closer look at that dive equipment. Along with the making our shark a bit more distinct. One thing that's kind of cool with this is, well, maybe some people wouldn't say the word say cool, but they show the shark very early in this. Like we get a just barely visible scene of it, like swimming under the water with its fin poking out, like in the first, I want to say 10 minutes tops of the film. And I really like that because it feels more real almost to me. Because if there was an animal, like if there was a 30-foot animal in the water, like you would see it. You wouldn't see it very well, but it would be visible if it was near the surface like that. So the fact that it wasn't just like, oh, fin out of nowhere, I liked that. But it also kind of gives our shark a little bit more personality because this one's kind of mean. Like it's almost got like an attitude in just how viciously it attacks people. Because the first shark, it felt more like an animal. Like this one feels more deliberate with its attack targets, which kind of makes sense in the book, but not in the film to me. Anyway, Jake.
I was going to say, as far as your point of you would definitely see it, definitely when it breaks the water, when you got the fin, I think you would definitely see it. But I've been to the beach several times, and visibility ain't shit under most conditions. And this is supposed to be in Long Island Sound, right?
I think it seems right to me. It's more like Martha's Vineyard, Maine. I mean, well,
yeah.
I know.
Okay, right.
Okay. Is that I don't know that area super well.
Okay, so east of Long Island. Well, it was filmed in Martha's Vineyard. I can't remember if it was supposed to be, or it was filmed in Martha's Vineyard and Florida, which amused me when I saw the sea oats. I was like, this was not filmed in New England. But I think it's in that general vicinity. But if it's Martha's Vineyard, my point stands even more because I haven't actually been there, but I do know where it's located relative. It's basically Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket are small islands off the Massachusetts coast. There's not really a significant body of water behind them. Long Island does have a significant body of water behind it. But still, you're basically looking at the Atlantic. So basically, point being, I would think from where the kids were on the beach, from where the woman was in her chair, yeah, they ain't seeing shit except for when the shark actually came out of the water. But some of the scenes, yeah, it would be certainly where Brody was perched on that. What's up?
It did kind of like leap on there. Not as egregiously as your shark onto Quint's boat, but it was just kind of like sticking out of the water. Yeah. So you could probably be like, "What the hell is that?" You know?
Yeah, if they were looking at it, they would have seen it. Yeah, but I feel like the two kids. I feel like the two teams were not looking at it when that happened. I could be wrong.
No, they weren't. They were making out.
Yeah. But Brody definitely would have seen a shark from his vantage point when he was up on the tower. Mm-hmm. He's all shape in the water, but you know.
Yeah, just like that school of fish.
Yeah.
Panics and trouble. I was mostly referring to the opening, one of the earlier opening scenes where the shark is like swimming into like the dock kind of area, into like the harbor. Because it's only like a couple feet beneath the surface. Like judging by its fin, it's like 2-3 feet below the surface, and you can't see it very clearly, but you can see like its shape, and you can make out its eyes before the fin breaks the surface. And I really like that shot.
Yeah, something like a harbor where the water is going to be a little calmer. Absolutely, I could see that being. And you're right, that can make an effective. I kind of like the less is more approach with the movies, but
not seeing it.
What's that?
Almost scarier than not seeing it.
Right. See, seeing it part way, yeah, that can be interesting.
Alrighty. So where are we now?
I think we're at the long stretch of the film where Brody is trying to convince people that we may have another shark problem here.
Yeah, I think he gets
Yeah.
the photos developed, and
Mm-hmm.
the guy takes him into the dark room, and he ends up seeing a photo where it looks like a little bit of an eye and some teeth, but it's very, very dark, and
It's like a big close up of the shark's face with like you can see like the corner of its mouth. So there's like 2 or 3 teeth, and you've got a pretty good look at its eye.
I gotta say though, the eye, if you know what you're looking at, that does look like a shark eye. But overall, that picture did not look like something I would want to use to convince people that there's sharks in the water. It makes you wonder. It almost feels like Brody got that picture in his hand and ran straight to City Hall. And I'm like, the guy
out of desperation.
I'm thinking the guy, the photographer, the photo tech had just started. He said, I just started a new batch. You'd think Brody would wait around to make sure there wasn't a better picture. He probably did, but the way the film is edited, it almost looks like he ran off as soon as he got that picture. I don't know if anyone got that impression, but
I did get that impression.
It seems like it's like, oh, picture, bye.
Well, the film doesn't do like a ton with it, but I think it's pretty clear that Brody has some like lingering like fear and trauma from the previous shark incident. So when it looks like it's happening again, like he is like, 5-alarm fire mode.
Paranoid.
Yeah, very paranoid. Like when he was making like cyanide bullets, like dipping basically. Like, that was a really interesting thing. I don't know if that would actually work, but like using like an eyedropper to put like drops of cyanide on his bullets and then like sealing them with wax. It's like I thought that was a really interesting idea. Like I kind of wonder where they got that from. Like, is that a thing that you can do? Or
maybe he uncovered one of the mayor's books. Maybe one of his mafia friends lent him a book on that, or. But I totally forgotten that scene. But I'm sitting there going, "Wow, he means business."
All right, and he probably remembers, firing his gun at the shark before on Quint's boat, just using like his service revolver. How the animal is so big, it almost does not care unless you got it like in the exact right spot. So I can see him maybe wanting to try to even the odds, but is an unusual tactic there. Well, we also get when they're looking for the bodies of the people of like the skier and the person in the boat are missing, and we get a pretty good, like really effective scene where they're still out kind of trawling for wreckage, and Brody thinks he sees like a piece of the boat, and we get this really uncomfortable scene where he like wades into like chest deep water to like retrieve a piece of the boat, and then like the charred body of like the boater is attached to it. Like that's kind of cruel. That was a lot for a small child. Especially with like the tension of the scene. So that might be one of the better scenes in the movie in terms of how well it works at being like a jump scare. Because you don't really see it coming too much. But anyway, after I think most of the conflict is just Brody trying to get people to listen to him, and a lot of just like his son Mike like hanging out for the summer. Like the teenagers have their own like really kind of tacked on like subplots, like, oh, we want to go have a race, or oh, we want to go out to the island, which is basically just like a rock with like the power plant on it. So that's another important thing that we're introduced to while they're searching for the exploded boat, They hook onto an underwater power cable, which will be important later. So that has to be established. Apparently, the island gets power by these big, thick cables that are just sort of sunk on the bottom of the ocean, like attached to the mainland. Which, I don't know if they really do that, but I don't have any other ideas. Does anybody know how that particular infrastructure thing would work? Like, with
What's that?
Not sure.
so nobody's sure if they would actually use like a big, like 1.5 foot thick, like cable, huh?
No.
You're talking about like the
power line.
line. Yeah, no, I feel like I have heard that that's a thing.
Well, if the cables were exposed and the electricity was on as much as that voltage was, which I think was 20,000 voltages, I think that's what I saw on the fence on that rock. I forget exactly what they call that island there.
Just like I feel like just call it like the power station or whatever, because it's really just like a shack, like on top of.
Was it Cable Island or something like that?
That
Yeah,
sounds right to me. Cable Island.
But I think I remember seeing like a 20,000 voltage thing, and he was just hoping upon hope that the shark would just go for it, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's we're still pretty far ahead of it, but it does establish that he knows that those are down there for the audience, and yeah, like, he would know about them as the chief of police. Like he would have to have some idea where the infrastructure stuff is.
Well, yeah, he literally had no weapons on hand at all, like to help him out, like when he went on that trawler. You know.
Finale of this is kind of like a rescue mission, because Micah and the teenagers decide to like just go out, for a fun day on the boat, and they happen to, in the book at least, be going to where the shark is going to go, like give birth. So the shark is in like turbo kill mode for anything moving anywhere near there. Like in the book, it's not even eating like the people it kills in that scene.
I do like how we
Right,
too kind of get a sort of reaction from the mob character, because there is a little bit of a scene where the wife basically gets mad at him. Doesn't she slap him or something like that?
If I remember correctly, they're kind of low key flirting with Brody's wife, and like kind of overworking her too for the opening of like this hotel or whatever their project is.
Yeah, I think the band actually plays on the first song, Downtown, instrumental. Downtown.
My earliest memory of this movie is actually the that particular scene, like when they're all at that like party at the pool, like the indoor pool, and that stuff is going on. It's like Miss Anhedenia, like that was. I think the first time I saw this movie, that's about where we tuned in, like changing the channel, and it's like, what's this? There's a Jaws 2? Because you heard of Jaws, but you didn't really have access to Jaws unless it was on TV. But I digress. Anyway, so I'm trying to remember some more of the kind of connective events, because it's mostly just Mike being like, "Oh, I want to go out with my friends."
There was the moment where the blonde's boyfriend gets eaten, and she's found hiding.
That is kind of after. That is after the teens disembark. I'm trying, and like the real rest of the movie starts up. I'm trying to remember like the connective stuff. I mean, we do get like the mystery of the dead orca,
Okay, so the
it's a
kids
great
end
way.
up wanting to go out to the lighthouse.
Okay.
And that's when the cousin that Mike has an interest in convinces him to hey, you always do what your parents say. No, no. Well, then come on. So he does go out with them like the following morning.
And if I recall
And
correctly, this
get-
was. Never
yeah.
mind. I was going to say
Go
this
ahead.
is also about when Brody gets shit canned, right?
Yes, he comes home and he sees that that his detective is or his deputy is there, and he toasts him right away.
Here's the new chief, yeah. Because he was a little too jumpy on the beach, like firing at those shadows. And also it's kind of causing trouble for like the development project too. Because I mean, I think they do know Brody is right, but they're just hoping it'll go away. Which,
And
no lessons were learned, of course,
also-
but that developer
also-
guy I think is more in charge than the mayor at this
Yeah.
point.
Also, he notices that this is like the first time in his life that he's actually been fired ever.
Yeah.
I do remember that speech. That was a really good speech. It's like, I've never been fired before. I mean, when I was 17, when I was a kid, yeah, sure, but nothing that matters. I've never been told I couldn't hack it. So it seemed to really like bother him, and I can completely sympathize with that, especially with my current job problems. So,
Right.
like,
I wonder.
my mind.
I wonder if he hated the director, if Roy Scheider hated the director as much as they say. I wonder if he was channeling some of that frustration in that. Like I wonder, no one never been told I couldn't hack it. Like, I wonder if the director had said something like that to him and he was responding to that, Possible.
Interesting. I hadn't really
Yeah.
considered that. That's
I hadn't thought about that.
I'm not.
But
I'm not this.
they end up going out to the lighthouse, but then one of them actually says, "Hey, I actually know a place that's a little bit further. Let's go that way." And it's about this time that how did he realize? I'm trying to remember. How did he realize to go out and check on the kids first of all?
Well, that was with the dive team that I was talking about earlier. Like in the book, it's like a named character and a bunch of other stuff. Like they're out practicing diving, and somebody sees the shark and they pull like their cord like in panic. That like it's like their emergency like ascension thing, and they just like shoot to the surface and like pass out just because they're so panicked at like the sight of the shark.
Okay.
In the book, that named character kind of goes back down there because he thinks that the person pulled their cord in panic like that because they saw like the missing buoy and were like, I can get to the surface and get the reward. And they just got too excited and pulled the cord. He doesn't realize that the shark is down there because there hasn't really been proof of the shark yet.
Creature.
And he ends up paying for that. The shark kills the fuck out of him. But it's the beginning of like the shark getting ready to give birth in the book. So it's just an aggression killing. Like the book mentions that, it comes up, holding the guy, like the guy's crushed body in its mouth and just kind of like lets it go and like swims away.
Oh.
But anyway, so after the kids leave, like they're going off one direction, and like that team of divers like doing like dive practice, they have that happen where they're like near the bottom and they encounter the shark, somebody like pulls their cord and like has an aneurysm when they hit the surface too fast,
Yeah.
And so Brody's like, wow, what's got them so spooked? Wait a minute, where's Mike's boat? And he puts it together kind of from there.
Well, doesn't someone say that they went out the same time the kids did, or something like that?
Yeah, there is a line drop of
Yeah.
some kind. Like I'm
Yeah.
looking at the comic, which I did read through. So like they're on the dock, like taking care of that guy, like with the ambulance, when Brody notices it's like, hey, Mike's catamaran isn't docked where it's supposed to be. And I see like the younger son has stowed away on the boat, and he sees like his younger kid's bike next to it, like on the dock. So it's like, oh no, they're both out there. Which kind of leads to our finale, which is, it's not really a chase, but it kind of feels a little bit like a chase. Like the shark is like pursuing them towards the land. Did anybody else get that kind of vibe from how that plays out?
Well, like I said, I kind of got the vibe that the shark was just screwing with them. I mean, again, if she was trying to protect her nesting grounds, it makes more sense that it would have gone that way. But it really did feel like this day. This is the one where Tina and her boyfriend are out. They get separated, I think, intentionally from the other group.
Yeah, they all go out with each other, and then Tina and her boyfriend, like, it's like, oh, we're falling behind, so they can make out.
Yeah.
And so the shark runs into them first.
Yeah. Yep. And he gets killed. And then we have one other who doesn't make it, but really very few fatalities, surprisingly few from this whole. One more of the kids. We have at least two more.
Yeah. One of the girls. One of the girls that was.
She sacrificed herself to save Mike's brother, and it was like
Martha or something, or I can't remember exactly.
Maybe Julie, something like that.
I thought it started with.
I feel that I can't remember the name because I always remember like out of all like I think that actually bothered me the most when I saw this like
Marge.
that girl. Marge, like that girl dying, like really upset me.
She was played by Martha. Okay.
Yeah, that bugged me. I mean, I did see this like really young, and she saved. What the hell is it? Chris? What is that kid's name?
The young one is Sean.
Sean, god damn it!
Yeah.
I kept trying to call him Mike too, and it's like you've seen this movie 30 times. You know what his name is, Dustin.
Right.
But, it was just kind of gross. Like I sort of toyed with her a little bit too. Like
yeah. But before that happens, I think in the first skirmish that the shark had with them before they started drifting off towards that buoy place.
The shark, they're all kind of like in a cluster, and the shark just kind of like thrashes up into it and breaks all their shit.
Yeah, and Mike, he hits his head on one of the masts on one of their sailboats pretty bad, and they need to get him to a hospital. So I think there's one of them actually
float the way it's supposed to, and they take him away on that.
And that's who runs into Brody at the lighthouse area.
Because Brody and the deputy are out there, like looking in the police boat. Like they find Tina, and like the deputy and Tina get a ride back with like another passing boat, while Brody like kind of forges on ahead. Like they send a helicopter.
Brody's wife was there too, but yeah.
Okay, I couldn't quite recall, so that's on me.
He had been trying for a while. Brody had been trying for a while to raise harbor patrol, and they do eventually get someone to the kids, but he is not successful in helping them because
One of the craziest scenes in movie history.
yeah. Actually, am I remembering this correctly? I feel like Michael Caine also played a pilot in the fourth movie, and I feel like the same thing happened to him.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Although I think, if I recall correctly, I think it's actually crazier in this movie because the helicopter is like, stay where you are, help is on the way, and it like starts like getting ready to land, and the shark just like leaps out of the water and like pulls it under while it's still in the air. And at the very least, I remember like when it pulls Michael Caine's plane under, Michael Caine's plane is like already on the water, like he's parked it, quote unquote. And we even get a line like, he opens the door, it's like, hey guys, I'm here. The shark like lunges for him, and he's like, oh shit, before diving out.
I saw a line, an article once. I saw an article once on actors and paycheck roles, and Michael Caine was on there, and they very pointedly put Jaws: The Revenge on there for him, and it's like. Oh no! It was I think it was Christopher Walken. They said, "Someone fire this man's agent," and then for Michael Caine, they said he was like the British Christopher Walken, because both of them have done so many blatant paycheck roles. Just they can't do that.
Michael Caine said over the years a couple different things about like being in Jaws 4, where he was like, it wasn't great, but I got paid to hang out in the Bahamas for 8 weeks. It was worth it. It was fine. It was worth it. And then in more recent years, he's like, well, that movie did buy my mom a house, so whatever.
And I'll admit, if I was given a decent paycheck and got to spend time in the Bahamas for a few weeks, I might not care too much about how good the movie is.
There's a joke that may or may not have actually been true, where somebody was speculating that when he was given the script, like the first piece of information he was given was that it's set in the Bahamas. You'll be in the Bahamas for 8 weeks, and he was just like, I accept, and he didn't look at it until he was on the plane there. So I don't know if it's a joke or a rumor. Also a rumor.
I could believe it. But
so actually,
I think in this case, the pilot. I think the pilot was an actual pilot. Like it was. I think he was brought in as a consultant, and they ended up just saying, "Well, why don't you just play the role?" Pretty much.
Yeah, I remember now. I used to watch the Movie Crypt, Adam Green and Joe Lynch's podcast, and they would occasionally do like movie commentaries. And I remember they did one for Jaws: The Revenge, because they had a running joke where they would put like a long pause between Jaws and The Revenge. So every time they said the title, it would be Jaws: The Revenge. And at one point, I don't know how, but I think they actually did call Michael Caine, and he talked to them for like 2 or 3 minutes about it.
Huh.
It's like, I don't know how they got his number. Like, it might have been like one of those like fake voice board like gag things, but they did do that. I wonder if I still have that. But anyway, we're barreling towards our climax here. So they managed to. That's another like kind of cool tense moment too, like when Mike's like knocked out and goes overboard. And they're trying to pull him in because the shark is like coming straight for him. And this is something I think is kind of bullshit now that I'm older and I can think about it. The shark was coming so fast, like towards him. Like they managed to pull him in the boat like just in time, and the shark's open mouth like scrapes by the boat. The shark was coming so fast and hard that if it had angled toward the boat like 3 more degrees, it would have just smashed right through that boat. So I kind of kind of don't know how that didn't happen. I mean, yeah, for drama's sake, and it's a really effective moment, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, wouldn't you have all died anyway? Because the shark is just absurdly big in this one. I mean, the Jaws 3D shark is actually even bigger, which is nuts. I mean, because the first Jaws shark is, they say Quint says 25 feet. Like, I'm okay with that, which is, a lot, but not unrealistic. Then when you get to like the 30 feet, it's like these are basically megalodons at some point. Like, I think the shark in Jaws 3D, like one character mentions that it's 35 feet, and it's like, okay, that's it's over the limit that we know of for the great white shark.
Not to interrupt, but I believe the island now, it was called Cable Junction, is where they were trying to go.
We were close. Thank you. But anyway, so Brody eventually catches up to like the wrecked raft that they've cobbled together from what's left of their boats. And he's basically just trying to tow the kids toward the island when the shark appears and just like wrecks his boat. And then we get our finale moment where he's in the rubber inflatable raft, and the power cable, one of those power cables is sort of sticking up out of the water because at Cable Junction, like they come out of the water and connect to like that bottom.
Well, when he actually tows the boats, that tow actually brings up that cable, and he realizes what it can help him with.
Yeah, it's like it quickly becomes pretty clear that the only way he has at his disposal to kill the shark is to try to trick it into biting the cable. And like, he's still doing shark research. Like, there's a scene where we see him like reading books, and I remember he reads or learns something about how sharks like are attracted to vibration. So he grabs a paddle, he starts doing like a rhythmic like whacking on the cable, and that does get the shark's attention the way like it would. So I kind of appreciated that it showed him like still doing research and like learning useful things.
Actually, the lady that came to investigate the whale that was bit by the shark is the one that told them that the sharks she is the one that said that they
okay. See, I
must have happened in the book
somewhere.
Because when she told him that, he said, "Oh, really?" Because he didn't realize that she thought just the movement and the splashing and that stuff. He didn't realize that when the noise attracts him until she said that.
Okay.
Which is why when the kids were shouting at him, "Hey, here we are!" I was like, "Shut the fuck up!" And when the girl was screaming, I was like, "Shut the fuck up!"
Well, they were trying to help help him make a break away from his sinking boat.
Well, that's how the shark knew about the helicopter and heard it.
Yeah, and that poor helicopter dude. Like, damn. One of the deleted scenes is the shark attacking the helicopter underwater. But that pilot did not survive. Yeah. We didn't need to go into a whole lot of detail for that. So I can kind of see why they cut it, because the movie is really long anyway, and it's like, what the shark did. Like, it's fine. So it's, yeah. But anyway, I think we get a reprise of the "Smile, you son of a bitch" line, don't we?
Yeah, I think so.
I seem to remember he says something slightly different, but I know, I'm so embarrassed I do not have like a perfect memory of that moment in particular, because it's such a crazy moment. Like, the shark like rushes at him as he's like holding up the cable, and he basically just pushes the cable in front of him. The shark chomps down right on the cable, and pretty much dies immediately. Like, it's like convulsing and shit. Like, sparks are flying out of its mouth. I think it bursts into flames and starts sinking. And it's like, well, he did.
You mean she, technically.
Oh, she, yes. It was, that was, I think I stole it from Rush Hour. He did. Chris Pratt. I don't know, it just jumped into my brain. But anyway, we get one last joke from Sean. It's like, they made me come. It's like, you insisted, kid. Like, this was kind of your fault in a lot of ways. You got that one girl killed, you son of a bitch. But yeah, I mean, it's a fun ride. I mean, I was really surprised at the length because it does not really feel like that long of a movie. I mean, because after the diver attack and the water skier attack, I was like, oh, okay, we're like, what, 45 minutes in? And it's like, no, we're 25 minutes in. So the pacing is pretty odd with this one. But I think we need to move on into
production.
Yeah, our other categories and start wrapping this up. So in terms of production, I think this looks like it had a pretty strong budget, especially as a follow-up to something like one of their like greatest works, like their most successful films. It feels like they would give that sequel like a lot of resources, and I think the shark looks a little bit better in this one. Like, still kind of hokey, but better. They also did still use some live shark footage, and I think they actually did a better job this time, because there's during the water skier attack, they have a close-up of like a live shark twisting with something at the surface, and the way it's cut into like her falling works very well for me. So I appreciated how they kept that going and did it like a little bit.
According to Wikipedia, Jaws 2 cost $30 million to produce, over 3 times more than the original.
Yeah, so it kind of shows, like, in my opinion, like, even though the burn on the shark maybe looks a little too clean, like, it looks like burned flesh. It doesn't look like a burned prop.
And as to, was Jaws 2 a success? It was briefly the highest grossing sequel in history until Rocky 2 was released in 1979.
I did see that on the wiki too. So that's kind of surprising, isn't it? Because, I mean, you hear people crap on the Jaws sequels a lot, but you don't hear them crap on this one as much, and I think it's pretty clear why. Like, this is like the most like solid of the sequels. Like, maybe it doesn't make perfect sense, but as a film, like, it's good enough on its own. Like, if it didn't have so much to live up to, I think it would be.
I just wish we had
it's already kind of
little more. I just wish we had a little bit more backstory as to why the shark was attacking. Just a little bit.
I do kind of wish they could have done what they did in the book with that, because I thought that was such an interesting concept, like having it be like a female shark, like returning to like the area, like just like a callback to something that occurred in the events of during the events of the first story that we just did not know about because we were not spending time with the shark in the ocean. But I think you can do that in a book where you can have like a few paragraphs from the animal's POV, and explore like the animal's kind of inner thoughts or instincts. But how do you really do that in a film like this? It's like, are you going to give the shark like a voiceover? Like, you really can't. So I feel like their hands are maybe kind of tied by just like that limitation. And so that's why its motivation is serious here. I did forget to touch on during that conversation with the killer whale like evaluator lady. Brody is offering some sort of theory about like sonar or whatever. Like if one shark was destroyed, like would another shark come? And she's like,
Right.
no. And the way that the Jaws sequels developed, I almost wonder if it is actually a family of sharks. I think that is a legit thing in the novelization for The Revenge. That's actually like a voodoo curse of some kind. And I have that book. I just have never gotten a chance to sit down and read it. And I really want to find out what all that's about because people do talk about the novelization in a positive light. So it's almost hints at like maybe there's a slightly supernatural thing going on with like the sharks being drawn to Amity. Because like the third one had the sense not to take place in Amity. I mean, Jaws: The Revenge really falters on that right away, and well, stupid character death aside, at least the third one, changes its setting, but I don't know. I like that it took the time to explain that in other media, but it does kind of leave like a loose end. Why are monster sharks attracted to this area? But what do you guys think? Like in terms of like the animatronic shark, like the explosions, how does it all hold up to you guys?
Tammy, why don't you go first?
I think they did a good job on it. I mean, yeah, after the shark got burned, the burn, when you saw the burn on it, it kind of, yeah, I agree that it looks more like if my arm got burned than the shark, but but I do, I like some of the close-ups of it. Otherwise, when you were talking about how the shark was coming flying at Michael and they pulled him up just in time, and you got that picture of the thing just going whoosh right alongside that boat like that was a pretty good. I thought that was a pretty good shot. Whether or not the shark could actually maneuver that good and turn that quickly to do that, I have no idea. But
it almost like roars a little in that moment, doesn't it? Or maybe it's just like the water like moving.
I thought it was still good though. I thought a little more drama that had to really be in it.
Yeah, I'm remembering maybe it like kind of distorts a little bit, like the corner of its mouth like goes in a little too much, but that was kind of why I made that point. It's like, doesn't it feel like it would just like crash right through that boat?
I do wish though that you're talking about things from the book. I wish that there was a few things that you mentioned in the book, so we got the kind of I wasn't aware that this was a female shark looking for a place to have her kids, until you said something about it. And all the times I've watched this movie, I didn't understand that that's why the shark was there. Now I do.
Yeah, and it's not used in
the movie for people that did not read the book. Otherwise, you're just thinking this shark is coming back because it wants to come back.
Right. I think I actually have a PDF of the book I can send you. It's not a very big book. I remember I read it in like a day and a half on the bus.
But otherwise, yeah, I thought it was interesting. Like I said, it's one of those that I just don't get sick of. Oh, there's nothing else on TV. Oh, Jaws is on. Oh, Jaws 2 is on. Oh, okay, yeah, let's put these on.
Yeah, let's watch that. Exactly.
So.
Yeah, maybe that buoy side. I almost said side mission. Maybe that buoy, like missing buoy subplot with the Navy, would have been interesting for padding out some of the screen time. Although, I mean, it did pad its screen time out already with other stuff, but maybe that would have been a bit more interesting and kept people like more engaged. So I think I agree with your point on that too, Tammy.
Alrighty, what about you, Jake?
What's up?
What did you think about production?
I feel like overall, you can mostly tell that I think you can mostly tell they had a somewhat better budget. Well, they had a much better budget, but I would say you can mostly tell it's a somewhat better budget. I feel like Spielberg did a phenomenal job with the budget that he had in the first movie. So I'm not sure that I would notice that end of it being all that much different. One thing that always occurs to me with this kind of movie, and this one is no exception, is the nature footage does not sync with the story being told. It's clear that the underwater scenes were filmed off of Southern California and not on the East Coast. And there are scenes that were filmed in Florida, and when I saw sea oats, I was like, yep. Yeah, you would not find that in the Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket area. Now, I did also see beach grass, which you will not see in Florida, so I know some of the scenes were filmed up there. But, you know, to me, these things do make a difference. But otherwise, I would say the production was mostly decent. Like I said, you could see some of the cracks in the foundation. The fact that Roy Scheider really does look like he's pissed off to be there. From what I understand, Murray Hamilton was dealing with family issues and they had to rush through his scenes. So that's two of your main stars right there who, you know, so there were some production issues clearly, but overall, though, it's pretty good. Now, one fun tidbit I read about this one is this was the film that had the tagline, "Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water." And apparently that became one of the most influential taglines ever created. So it's kind of interesting that this movie has that distinction.
Oh yeah, it's been parodied 6 Ways to Sunday, that tagline.
So, you know, and I've always appreciated a good tagline, so that I appreciate that. But yeah, that's probably what I have to say on that.
So I would like to I just wanted to take a moment to be like, I appreciate how you're able to like notice the like difference in like the geographic features of the water. That's something, I mean, I'm a scientist too, but I'm not familiar with that specifically. So I think it's pretty cool that you can like tell like that. And I did want to say, like, I agree that the live footage is always kind of like clumsy when it's like cutting between like the prop and the real animal, because they look kind of nothing alike. But my earlier comment, what I really meant was I think it's done better here. It's not great, but it looks better than it did in the first Jaws, in my opinion. So I just wanted to clarify that point I made.
Okay. Well, I thought there was a lot of drama that was involved in this one, more than I think that was needed. As far as production goes, I think when it came to the shark, especially when it attacked, they still got it, you know, because, you know, right early off, I mean, it gets the divers in the very beginning, you know, and I mean, you don't see much of it, but you get the extent, you get the gist that the divers are gone.
It's a good attack scene. It works.
Yeah. And then, of course, then you've got the skiing incident with the girl on the skis, the explosion there. So that was quite a big explosion if you actually count like seeing it from the beach from the old lady's perspective. And the definite attack scene with the blonde and her boyfriend, and then of course the playing around with the kids twice actually, because the first one he kind of literally destroys the boats, and then they all tie it all together, drift a little bit, and then they're attacked again, and then of course the final scene with the shark. So I thought eventually, once they got around to the shark scenes, the production was pretty good. I mean, they had enough attacks to have in a shark movie, you know. So, I mean, if it weren't for Jaws, we wouldn't have a lot of these like B movie shark movies that are on Sci-Fi Channel. You know, it literally is like the blueprint where everybody starts from. You know, so. But yeah, I enjoyed them for the most part.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it took a bit to get to some of the action scenes, but I think it's a strong contender as a sequel in the long
Yeah,
run.
I think I agree with that too, and like the Jaws sequel is kind of paving the way for like more TV movies about sharks, because I mean Jaws had done it like so well, and there were imitators of Jaws, but they were all pretty bleh. It was almost like nobody was like, it was like no, it almost feels like nobody was really sure how to do it again until like there were more examples of it, of like a shark being done well, like as an effect. So I mean, this is just kind of a theory I'm crafting here, but I think like Jaws like 2, 3, and 4, like it's the logistics of, you know, how do you film like a, you know, a fake shark in the water. You know, I think that gets like worked out a little bit better over the course of that series, and then like other, you know, filmmakers are like, oh, okay, we can make a shark movie because we don't have to, you know, spend millions of dollars like R&Ding, you know, what works and what doesn't for producing this kind of thing. So I think that's a good point you just kind of made there.
Okay.
And I do also want to point out that in that first scene where it is kind of like swimming into the harbor, like you see just enough of like the outline of it that if I had been like outside and I had seen that in the water, it would have completely fooled me. Like I would have bought that was alive. So I just think that moment is so effective, and just kind of demonstrates that, you know, they did a better job of the production here. I mean, I hear there were still a lot of problems getting the shark to work, but you know, look, it like, you know, I just kind of postulated, you know, trial and error from making more shark movies. So is that your thoughts on production, Dave?
Yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on production.
All right.
And
yeah.
of course, the music is self-explanatory.
Yeah, it's done by John Williams. It's done by John Williams again, and it is spectacular. It's more. It feels like a reprise of just all the motifs from Jaws. Really, I'm almost not sure how much new music there is, honestly.
Apparently, he did produce some new music, but I think part of the issue is that apparently there, according to IMDb, there were delays in filming. There were delays in filming, and Williams, his schedule, he had to start composing before he had a completed film to work from. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if there's a few new pieces, but if at the end of the day they just kind of scored the film with cut and paste from both new and old material, wouldn't surprise me at all if that's what they ended up doing. It's all John Williams and it all sounds like Jaws, but you're right, very little of it sounds particularly new. It's still great. Yeah.
I have a
Okay.
connection for soundtracks, and I'm looking at their website right now to try to see if there's any information on the pages for the Jaws soundtracks. So let's try clicking on a couple of these and see what we get.
Meanwhile, let's go around and ask a few of, like, we'll start with you, Tammy. What was a favorite character and a favorite scene? And why don't you go ahead and, if you already know, what was your favorite Jaws movie?
Okay. Well, my favorite scene is the ending when he gets electrocuted because I think that's cool. Favorite character? I have to say Brody. He's just, nobody will listen to him, and he says more than once, "I know what I'm talking about." You guys, I'm not doing this again. And they're just totally dismissing him, and it's just like he's putting, he's risking everything to tell them, and ends up risking everything to tell them, and they just don't want to listen. And it's like, but yet he doesn't give up. He goes against, he's not supposed to take the boat out because he's no longer sheriff and this, he just goes and does everything anyways. And I have to give him credit for that. I mean, he's not a big fan of the water or anything, and he just.
Oh yeah, he's willing to go up against the man to pretty much get his point across.
Yeah, he gives it his all, and I guess number one will still always be my favorite because that's what started it all.
Okay. What about you, Jake?
So you said favorite scene, character, in Jaws movie?
Yep.
Shoot. Favorite scene in this one might be the part at the end where the shark, where we get the fried shark. If only because I think that was the part that actually stuck in my mind, but it also was fairly memorable. I'm really hard pressed to pick a favorite moment. Like, I guess that would work as one. As far as characters, I want to say Brody. Partly because I feel some sympathy for Roy Scheider, but also because I feel very much sympathy for the character, for Brody. But he does do some dumbass shit that really makes me wonder. Some of the kids were fun, but I don't know that any of them would be fun enough to. So I guess I'll go with him. Favorite movie is easily the first Jaws. I mean, that's the one I had Quint in it, and he is the best character in the whole franchise, no question. But also, just the first movie was a great movie. This is a good movie, but that was a great movie. I guess I do need to see 3 and 4 again to see if what I would think of them with fresher eyes, I guess you could say. But yeah, I think it's probably pretty safe to say the first movie.
Okay.
Well, I am going to do what we probably should have done from the start with this and exclude the first movie because everything in the first movie is like perfect. So I'm going to go with sequels only for this. So I think my favorite sequel is actually Jaws 3D, just because I really like that setting, and it's more it's more fun. Like there's no like really like ugly like character deaths that like upset me. I mean, again, I'm coming from my childhood memories with this, so like sometimes some of those kills like in Jaws 1 and 2, like I still kind of like wince at. Whereas in 3, I can just watch 3 all day and I feel fine. Like it has that hilarious moment with the very clearly like not actually there shark like bashing through into the audience. It's so funny. And for favorite like sequel character, I'm gonna go with Michael Caine because he's hilarious and just such a fun character. As for in Jaws 2 itself, I think my favorite scene might actually be encountering like the dead whale, because it shows that this shark is much more aggressive and like powerful than it maybe should be. Because killer whales like will hunt gray white sharks, like they pretty much just like torture them to death for fun. And like this shark was able to take out an orca, like even a young orca, that's like a relatively comparable size. Like that's it kind of hints that something else is maybe going on there. Like especially with that subplot in the book of like having like the shark pups. If that animal, you know, encountered an orca near where it wanted to like have its pups, like it would tear the orca to shreds, like first chance it got, and that's what happened. Like it's, I do really wish that had been like written into the movie in some way, but again, I don't know how they would have done that. And for a favorite character who is in Jaws 2 itself, I think it would have to maybe be. This is really stupid. So early on when they're establishing, you know, what Amity has become like in, you know, a year since the incident, like it's gone back to having like normal stupid problems, and there's a bunch of people in Brody's office with just ridiculous complaints, you know, kind of like before. Like in the first movie, it's like, you know, the little kids at the karate school are karateing the picket fences. It's like, what? We get similar just bullshit complaints from people here. And my favorite guy in this movie is the one guy who's like, I need to talk to you about, I forget what the girl's name is, so-and-so. It's like, okay, well, what about it? And he's like, you know, she stands in her window faces my son's room, and she just stands there dancing around in a towel. And he's like, Brody's just like, what are you talking about? It's like, he's driving my boy to distraction. And he just kind of like looks at him and he's like, okay, deputy, you come figure this dance out, like whatever. He's just like, he's just not care at all. It's like you can almost see in his face it's like the stupidest complaint he's ever received.
You got to admit though, if that old man's onto something, then the deputy may have just gotten the assignment of the year.
Didn't he refer to him as Old Man in the Sea too?
Maybe that might have been the.
I think
was the guy on the trawler?
Yeah, that was the guy that
got
was
on
out
the trawler. Here, take Old Man in the Sea with you.
Yeah, that was a different guy.
Okay.
Yeah, this actually had some pretty fun one-liners like buried in it.
Okay, so did you finish then?
Yeah, I finished. So.
Okay. Me, trying to think. I do think that the ending scene is a good one, but for some reason, even though it does bother me, I think the best scene was, in fact, when the girl saved Sean and she was eaten. I do think that was one of the better scenes because it's one that I remember, you know, from that and the explosion of the actually when Brody actually found the burned body. That was another scene that I remember. And maybe because I remember, it's one of those scenes that I'll never forget, So, that being said, favorite character. I have to say that my favorite character is Brody, because at the end of the day, he is kind of heartfelt. He is a man who wasn't exactly a company man, not entirely. I mean, he tried to be, but he kept getting shot down. He wasn't believed, and when shit went down, they were all sorry, but it's movies like this that somewhat make me hate government or anyone in authority a little bit, because we as audience members and the filmmakers end up making them out to be like keystone characters, so they look more bumbling, and I do wonder if there is some
bumbling
Mar in reality too, because we still have public things that happen where government officials muck things up. So that being said, I think if I went with sequels, I do think Jaws 3 is actually a favorite. But overall, I think Jaws is my favorite of them all. So, it is an impressive film for what almost wasn't. So, yeah, that's where I stand. I mean, one of the things that I remember from the first one is always the leg in the water, that's just floating. So, but in any case, did anyone else have anything else to add?
So I double checked the music, and as soon as I read this, I realized what they were talking about, and I was like, how did I not pick that out? There's kind of like a new piece of music, like whenever the teens are out, the teens have their own theme, and it's like it's like bright and cheerful to contrast with the shark music. And I had kind of forgotten that was in here, because it fits into the scenes so well. It's like, but apparently the Jaws 2 soundtrack was somewhat well acclaimed, and I think it seems to suggest did he get another award for that? I mean, he didn't get another award from it, but it seems like critics enjoyed it. Yeah, critics have placed the score comparing it favorably to the original. Okay, so I definitely need to. Apparently, I do not have it, so I need to go get it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this is the part where we sign off by telling who we are. So I'm Texas the Crypto Forrest. I have a YouTube channel where I show off things from my horror movie collection and occasionally try to have a discussion about a horror movie topic. So my channel has been kind of on hold for a while because this year has been terrible. But we're doing everything we can to try to start posting stuff again. And I'm more active on my Instagram lately, also the Crypto Forrest, where it's just easier to take pictures of some of the stuff I have in my collection. So you'll see more updates there. And I'm also on Twitter, or X, or whatever they call it now, as Cryptaxis, where I hang out and talk about movies and almost anything else whenever. So feel free to follow me on any of those platforms and give me a reason to start making stuff again. So, and with that, I have to go. So good night, and I'll let everybody else do their intros.
Good night.
Okay. Good night. Go ahead, Tammy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I go on this channel and another with David, my fiance, and talk about movies with everybody. And like I like getting their opinions and checking out things I haven't seen. And that's about it right now. I have my own collections, and now that summer's over, I guess I'll be looking for something else to have a hobby on.
Well, we're definitely going to try to get some of your parts filmed for my anthology soon. So, you a little bit excited about that?
I guess.
Okay. Well, in any case, heading over to Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm Kotobukijake. I'm the co-host of SeptumSin versus World YouTube channel that was briefly back after a hiatus before going on another hiatus, but we still do stuff now and then. We have a discussion on our anime anticlimax feature from last week where we talked about ghost stories that well-known and occasionally well spoken of ish series. We had fun with that, sort of a Halloween ish series. And generally I just keep very busy most of the time, but I do try to make some time to watch a movie each week to join these fine folks for our discussions. And it was nice going back into the waters around Amity for another little swim. Like I said, I'm sure the inevitable Jaws 3 discussion and the equal inevitable Jaws 4 discussion will probably be coming up sooner than later. Look forward to those as well.
Alrighty. And my name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, and we go on here every Monday and talk about movies of all kinds. And a lot of us enjoy talking through them. Sometimes we find out things that we never even knew about them. So I hope you enjoyed our discussion on Jaws 2. But I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I also go on almost every Sunday, and we also discuss movies of all kinds on that channel as well. So check out either channel. And I do video reviews, video pickups, and all that kind of jazz. So head on over to Delusions of Grandeur to check that out, or Inside Movies Galore. We always have something on the channel to try to please some of ourselves and some of you guys, if you like to listen to our kind of jazz. But I've been actually filming with my friends here over at SeptumSin versus the World, and it's looking like my anthologies are starting to look like they're ship shape. And next week, I'm hoping to actually have the first film entirely and completely, hopefully, finished, except for the end credits. So that's my hope. So might be able to get that in the can next week. So, and Jake, I don't think we'll need you for this next Monday either, at least yet. So we're gonna do a little bit more editing.
Okay.
So, but plan on the following Monday, and by that time I'll have some of your stuff that I'll probably need you to probably read for me once you come back or whatnot. After the show, I'll go over a prop that I might have Brandon help you pick up or whatnot. But in any case, hopefully out there, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next. Well, actually, we might actually see you next week because I think we're doing some online games live, aren't we? On our channel. I think Brandon said we were doing it live, or are we just?
I'm not 100% certain myself.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that. So if you guys see us live, we're doing some online games next week. Should be some fun. If not, then I guess we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Should we go ahead and do the lineup for November, or?
Sure. Let's go ahead and do the lineup. Brandon sent it to me, but if you also have it, go ahead and read it.
Yeah. Okay. So again, we've got a game night next week, which may or may not be live. Our regular viewers will find out, won't they? But after that, we have an interesting little film called Oversexed Rug Suckers from Mars. Followed by a very recent film, 2023 film, I believe, called Totally Killer. And ending, I believe, another 2023 film of Five Nights at Freddy's. The latter two being Dustin's picks since it's his birthday month. So should be some interesting stuff later in the month. Yeah.
Yep. So that should be an interesting month of November.
Mm-hmm.
And I think eventually we will reveal our December month, because I think we actually got our December mapped out too eventually. So maybe about mid-month we'll reveal that. So
okay.
Alrighty. So like, share, and subscribe. Let us know that down in the comments what you thought of our discussion, whether you've seen the film, and we'll see you back next week, if not the following week. So enjoy. And everyone say good night.
Good night.
Good night, all.